My brother bought a Mustang using a $20,000 loan he took out in my name. When I found out, my parents called it a symbol of brotherhood and disowned me for pressing charges. They thought I'd back down. I didn't. You should be honored Derek would even associate such a purchase with you. That's what my father said when I confronted them about the debt, about the forged signature, about the $20,000 loan tied to my name like a ticking time bomb. I still remember the way he looked at me, as if I had disappointed him. And Derek? He just stood there, arms folded, like some misunderstood poet, nodding like I was the one being unreasonable. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's rewind. I'm 29 now. I've built a quiet life for myself, a one-bedroom apartment I actually like coming home to, a stable job in IT that pays the bills and leaves room for saving, and just enough peace in my routine to feel like I've carved out something that belongs to me. I'm not flashy. I'm not chasing dreams of becoming a millionaire. I just want my damn name to mean something I can be proud of. My older brother Derek, on the other hand, is the golden child of the family. He's 31, hasn't held a job for longer than 6 months in the past decade, and still lives at home in his studio, which is really just the basement of my parents' house that he's turned into a cluttered, half-hearted attempt at a startup HQ. His latest venture? A subscription box of custom inspirational quotes, handwritten and mailed monthly. Don't even ask. But in my parents' eyes, Derek is special. He's a visionary, too sensitive for the rigid expectations of society, meant for something bigger. Their words, not mine. I've heard those lines at every birthday, every Thanksgiving dinner, every time I got promoted or did something that could only half-heartedly acknowledge before pivoting back to how Derek just needs a little more time. I, on the other hand, have always been labeled the too practical one, the one who thinks too small and lacks family spirit. Their favorite line? You're so independent, you probably don't even need us. Which, I've come to realize, is code for, we're not going to support you, emotionally or otherwise, because we've already decided Derek is the one who deserves that. I'll admit, I used to take the bait. I used to bend over backward trying to prove I was just as worthy. I'd bring extra food to family dinners, offer to fix their Wi-Fi for the 5th time, congratulate Derek on his latest delusion as if it was a Shark Tank winning idea. I think a part of me was always hoping they'd one day stop, look at me, and see me. Just me. Not as a background character in the Derek show. But that never happened. In fact, the moment I really should have known things would never change was last Christmas. I showed up with gifts I'd carefully picked out for everyone. Things I knew they'd actually use. My mom didn't even unwrap hers, just smiled and placed it aside like she was doing me a favor. Derek, meanwhile, gave everyone hand-drawn doodles of himself as a Greek god, and you'd think he handed them a Picasso. My parents called it hilarious and so creative. My gift cards and thoughtful presents? Oh, thanks. Very useful. Still, I stayed polite. I kept the peace. That's what I've been taught. But peace only works when everyone's playing fair. And Derek? Derek doesn't play fair. He plays favored. And the thing about favored people is, they start to believe they're untouchable. It all started unraveling about 3 months ago. I was finishing up a pretty stressful week at work when I got a call from an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. We're calling regarding your missed payments on a 2019 Ford Mustang. The outstanding balances. I hung up. Must have been a scam, I thought. I didn't even own a car. I lived in the city and commuted by train. But then the letters started coming in. Red-stamped envelopes piling up at my doorstep. The debt was real. The name on the contract? Mine. My address, my social security number, everything. It was as if I had walked into a dealership one day and signed my financial life away. Except I hadn't. I spent the next weekend knee-deep in paperwork, back and forth calls with the loan company, and the ugly realization that someone had taken out a $20,000 auto loan using my identity. At first, I thought it had to be a stranger, some hacker, a random thief. But when I saw the dealership's name on the paperwork, it clicked. That dealership was 5 minutes from my parents' house. I hadn't been there in months, but I knew who had. And when I looked up the car listed on the loan, I nearly laughed. A red Mustang. The exact same one Derek had posted about on his Instagram 2 weeks prior with the caption, "Manifestation is real." I stared at my screen, heart pounding, vision tunneling. This wasn't some shady outsider. It was him. My brother. I don't think there's any way to fully explain what it feels like to have someone you share blood with do something so fundamentally violating. The idea that he'd not only lie but steal my identity to fund one of his impulsive dreams, it was like a punch to the gut followed by a kick to the ribs. I drove straight to my parents' house that night. Derek was there, Of course, lounging on the couch in his usual creative mode, sweats, playing some fantasy game on his laptop. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just asked him flat out if he had taken a loan out in my name. He paused his game. Oh, that. His tone was casual. Yeah, I meant to tell you. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. He went on to say he figured I wouldn't mind since I didn't have a car. That I'd always held myself back from getting nice things. That he was helping both of us by taking action. I did this for you, he actually said. You never would have gotten a car otherwise. I stood there, absolutely floored. I didn't know what to say. I think part of me still wanted him to admit it was a mistake. To apologize. To treat it like the crime it actually was. But no, he truly believed he had done something noble. And as it turns out, I hadn't even reached the worst part yet. After that ridiculous confrontation with Derek, I left my parents' house in a daze. I drove around for hours, not even sure where I was going. It wasn't just the loan, or the car, or the blatant theft. It was the complete absence of remorse. The way he looked me in the eye and talked about helping me, like I should be grateful. Like forging my name and sticking me with a massive financial burden was some kind of selfless gift. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by a stack of debt notices in my own disbelief. I tried to piece together the timeline, how long he must have been planning it, how he got access to my information. The more I thought about it, the more it became obvious he'd been digging through my stuff for a while. Last time I visited, my wallet went missing for a few hours, and I chalked it up to clumsiness. Now I realized it was probably him copying my ID, maybe even snapping photos of my credit cards when I wasn't looking. The sick part? I wouldn't put it past him. Still, a part of me, some lingering shred of hope, thought maybe my parents would finally see him for who he was. Surely this, literal identity theft, was too far, even for them. I figured they'd be furious. Maybe not at first, but once they saw the proof, they'd have to take my side. So I made copies of everything. The loan paperwork, the forged signature, the dealership details. I put it all in a folder and went back to the house a couple of days later. I walked in, and the atmosphere was strange. My mom was in the kitchen, acting overly cheerful in a way that didn't match the situation. My dad was sitting at the table, already sipping a drink even though it wasn't even noon. Derek, naturally, wasn't around. My mom called it a family meeting. She said they needed to talk things through like adults and clear the air before things got worse. What happened next was a complete ambush. I laid out the folder on the dining table, thinking I was about to make my case. I'd rehearsed it in my head a dozen times, show them the evidence, explain how serious this was, get their support in fixing it. Instead, they completely blindsided me. My mom didn't even look at the documents. She said Derek's actions were a sacrifice, something he did because he believed in a shared future for the both of us. She actually said it took courage. My dad chimed in next, implying that I should feel honored Derek would include me in such a big purchase. He said something about how it reflected the bond of brotherhood that I'd apparently forgotten. Then they started spinning this narrative about family loyalty, how families weather storms together, how debts, even legal ones, should be shared burdens. My dad even suggested that my reaction was the real problem, not Derek's behavior, that I was being cold, selfish, and ungrateful for trying to divide the family over what he called a misunderstanding. I was speechless, completely stunned. They weren't just defending Derek, they were turning on me. It didn't matter that I had all the paperwork right there. It didn't matter that my name was on a loan I never agreed to. In their eyes, Derek was still the victim, the dreamer who meant well, the beloved son who deserved a second chance. And me? I was the disloyal one, the buzzkill who didn't understand what it meant to be part of a true family. The conversation, if you could even call it that, spiraled quickly. My mom started crying about how the family was falling apart, as if I'd driven a wedge through us. My dad accused me of being bitter and distant for years and said maybe this was my way of punishing them. None of it made sense. It was like I was speaking one language and they were hearing another. And in the middle of it all, Derek walked in. He acted confused at first, like he had no idea what was going on. Then he sat down, casually listened to everything, and said he was willing to work something out if I really insisted on being so formal about it. He offered to make me co-owner of the car, as if that was some kind of consolation prize. The same car bought with my name and my debt. I told them I wasn't paying a cent, that I wasn't going to shoulder a loan for something I didn't buy and never agreed to, that this was identity theft, plain and simple. That was when the mood shifted. My mom stopped crying and went cold. My dad leaned back in his chair like I just told them I was disowning them. Derek just shrugged, like he'd done all he could and now the ball was in my court. I left before I said something I'd regret. My hands were shaking the whole way back to my car. I remember sitting behind the wheel, staring at the dashboard, and realizing this wasn't just about a loan. It was about what my place had always been in this family. Expendable, replaceable, convenient, until I wasn't. They had made their choice. Not just now, but years ago. And if I didn't act, if I let this go, I'd be validating everything they believed about me, that I was the one who'd always bend, always swallow the injustice, always put family first even when it meant setting myself on fire to keep them warm. Not this time. I called a lawyer the next morning. Filing the lawsuit wasn't a spontaneous decision. I knew what I was doing. I understood it would come with backlash. But what I hadn't anticipated, what truly blindsided me, was the spectacle my family would turn it into. The day I signed the papers with my lawyer, I remember feeling equal parts sick and resolute. Derek had committed a crime, and I was the one left holding the debt. This wasn't about sibling rivalry or petty revenge. It was about self-respect. I wasn't going to be dragged down financially or emotionally for the sake of some warped version of family unity that only worked one way. My lawyer didn't sugarcoat things. He said we were dealing with clear-cut identity theft and fraud, and depending on how the court saw it, criminal charges might be a possibility. He told me to prepare for escalation, especially since the defendant was a relative. In cases like this, things rarely stay quiet. And boy, was he right. Within a week of being served, Derek took to social media. I didn't follow him, but friends started sending me screenshots. He posted some long-winded status update about how family means nothing anymore and how he was being punished for trying to help his little brother live a better life. He painted this picture of himself as a generous, misunderstood guy who was now being attacked in court for something that was supposed to be a gift. He used words like betrayal, heartbreak, and forgiveness like they were props in some one-man play. It was all incredibly melodramatic. He even included a photo of himself sitting on the hood of the car in question, head down, looking reflective. I rolled my eyes so hard I nearly gave myself a headache. The comments were worse. People who didn't know the full story, mostly mutuals from our hometown, were rallying behind him, talking about how tragic it was that money could divide family. Some even threw shade my way, calling me cold, calculating, ungrateful. A few messages found their way into my DMs, complete strangers telling me I should be ashamed. Derek was spinning the story faster than I could keep up, but I kept quiet. I figured the legal system would do what it needed to, and I didn't owe anyone outside of it an explanation. Let them gossip. Let them speculate. I had proof, and I had every right to protect myself. But of course, the circus wasn't done yet. 2 days after Derek's pity post went viral in our small circle, I got a call from my mother. At first, I let it ring. Then I got a text from her saying it was urgent. Against my better judgment, I picked up. She didn't yell. She didn't scream. She cried. Said the family was crumbling. Said my actions were hurting not just Derek, but her and my father too. That people were talking. That their friends were asking questions. That their image, their reputation was on the line. And I'll be honest, part of me thought she was going to apologize. I thought maybe, just maybe, she realized how serious this had become. But no. The longer she talked, the more it became clear. This wasn't about justice or fairness. It was about saving face. She begged me to drop the lawsuit. Said that family should handle things within the home, like we were still living in the 1950s. She said if I backed off, Derek would probably agree to take over the payments, and wouldn't that be a nice resolution? When I didn't respond, she changed tactics. Said I was acting like I'd never made mistakes. That I was being vindictive. That suing my own brother was cruel and unnecessary. She didn't ask me how I was doing. Didn't ask about the stress, the debt collectors, the late fees piling up because of a loan I never took. She just wanted it all to go away quietly, without scandal. I told her I wasn't dropping anything. I told her Derek committed a crime, and I wasn't going to let it slide because of some illusion of loyalty that only ever flowed one way. She went silent. Then she said something I'll never forget, that if I went through with this, they'd have no choice but to sever ties. That they'd have to choose between me and Derek, and they were going to choose him. She hung up before I could respond. The next day, I got a letter in the mail. It was a formal statement. My parents' handwriting, signed by both of them, saying they were withdrawing all parental support and recognition from me until I chose to reconcile and drop the lawsuit. It read like a damn cult manifesto, but they weren't done. A few days after that, another wave of social media posts started circulating. This time, from my parents' joint account. They posted some long post about how a parent's love is not unconditional when it comes at the cost of loyalty. Said they had one true son who, though flawed, understood the meaning of sacrifice. Derek, of course, shared it with a heart emoji. My name wasn't mentioned, but everyone knew. I stopped going online for a while. Turned off notifications. There's only so much gaslighting one person can take before it becomes noise. And the truth was, I was already feeling the weight of it. I didn't expect them to applaud me for taking legal action, but being disowned for protecting myself? That cut deep. I talked to my lawyer again. He said we were making progress and that we had a solid case. But emotionally, I was wrecked. I couldn't focus at work. I couldn't sleep properly. Every day felt like a balancing act between staying strong and falling apart. I'd gone no contact since then. I hadn't spoken to any of them. Not Derek. Not my parents. Not even our cousins or the few extended family members who reached out with awkward, hope things get better messages. This wasn't just about a lawsuit anymore. This was about reclaiming my sanity. Because I realized something. I spent my whole life being the dependable one. The fixer. The responsible one. And in doing that, I taught them they could treat me however they wanted, and I'd still show up, still be the good son, still clean up the mess. Not anymore. The lawsuit moved faster than I expected. Derek had 30 days to respond after being served, and his lawyer, clearly not high-end, probably one of those local, you-pay-what-you-can types, filed a laughable response claiming there was implied consent between us. As if I'd ever implied it was okay to forge my signature, open an auto loan in my name, and buy himself a damn Mustang. My lawyer assured me it was weak. The court would see right through it. And honestly, I needed that reassurance because the weight of everything was starting to press down on me hard. Debt collectors still called. Emails kept flooding in about missed payments and growing interest. It didn't matter that I was fighting it. The debt was still tied to my name for the time being. I wasn't just fighting Derek. I was fighting every institution that saw my name on a form and didn't care about the context. The hearing date was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, I focused on work. Tried to stay out of the drama. Tried not to scroll social media, even though friends kept sending me screenshots of Derek's latest pity party. He was practically running a PR campaign. Posting videos with sad music in the background, moping about how his brother was punishing him for caring too much. And then, somehow, things got worse. About 3 weeks before the hearing, I got an envelope from Derek's lawyer, another attempt at settlement. This time, he was willing to pay $50 a month toward the loan if I dropped the charges and publicly stated that it was a misunderstanding. $50 a month. For a $20,000 loan he fraudulently tied to my name. I didn't even respond. I handed it over to my lawyer, who basically rolled his eyes and said we were going to stick to the court route. The next week, I got a knock on my apartment door. I opened it to find 2 people filming on their phones. Turns out Derek had sent a couple of his friends to interview me for his social media channel. He apparently wanted to do a documentary-style series about toxic family dynamics. I slammed the door in their faces, but not before one of them muttered something about how I'd regret not making peace while I still could. It was like a parody of a documentary, except no one was laughing. Least of all me. That was the moment I realized something truly depressing. Derek wasn't afraid. He wasn't panicked. He was entitled. Even now, with legal action against him, with possible criminal charges on the table, he still believed he was the victim. Still thought the world would bend around him. And why wouldn't he? He'd never once faced real consequences for anything. Until now. The hearing was surreal. I expected a chaotic mess, but it was actually fairly straightforward. My lawyer laid out the evidence, the forged loan documents, the dealership's confirmation that Derek was the one who picked up the vehicle, the signature mismatch. We even had a written statement from the dealership rep confirming that Derek had claimed to be me. Derek's defense was bizarre. His lawyer tried to argue that it was a brotherly act gone wrong, that Derek had assumed my consent based on our shared upbringing, that it was a gray area transaction. I kept my cool, answered questions, and stuck to the facts. I explained how I only found out because of the debt collector calls, that I'd never applied for a loan, never stepped foot in that dealership, and never once been consulted about the car. I told the court that I was now thousands of dollars in debt because of something I had no hand in. When Derek was asked to testify, he spoke calmly, smiling, even. He said he believed I'd come around, that he thought it was something we could figure out as brothers. He even added that he thought the car would help me get out more. The courtroom was silent for a few seconds after that. Even the judge tilted their head like they couldn't believe what they'd just heard. Afterward, the judge didn't make an immediate ruling, but I saw it in their face. They were done with his nonsense. We left the courtroom, and I finally breathed again. Not relief, not yet, but a sense that the tide was turning. And then came the breaking point. That evening, my parents showed up at my apartment. My mom looked like she'd been crying for hours. My dad looked exhausted but angry in that quiet, seething way he always got when he felt disrespected. They didn't come to apologize. They came to plead. They told me to drop it. Said Derek was breaking down, that he couldn't handle this kind of stress, that he hadn't been eating, hadn't been sleeping, that jail or a criminal record would ruin him. My mom went on and on about how she never imagined things would go this far, that she thought we'd work it out like family, that I was tearing everyone apart. My dad, meanwhile, paced behind her and asked if I really wanted to be remembered as the son who turned his back on blood. I stood there, arms folded, leaning against the doorframe. And for once, I didn't flinch. I told them I was done, that if Derek wanted forgiveness, he could start by owning up to what he did, not spinning it into some tragic comedy for likes, not sending people to harass me, not offering me $50 like that was going to fix anything. I told them they chose their golden boy. Now they could live with it. They left without another word. The court decision came a week later. The judgment was clear. Derek was liable for identity theft and fraud. The loan would be transferred back to him. My name would be cleared, pending the standard bureaucratic process with the credit agencies. He'd also been ordered to pay my legal fees. There was a separate recommendation that local authorities investigate the matter for potential criminal charges. I slid down onto the stairwell landing, phone still in hand, and just sat there in stunned silence. It was over. Not the debt, at least not yet. That part would take a few more months to fully scrub from my record. But the hardest part, the part where I had to stand there alone while everyone I called family tried to turn me into the villain, that part was done. And then, right on cue, the fallout began. The next morning, Derek posted another one of his infamous social media rants. This time, there was no sad violin music or cryptic metaphors. He was angry. Said I'd weaponized the legal system to destroy a family bond, that I'd embarrassed him publicly, that I'd ruined his future over a misunderstanding. He deleted it after a few hours, but not before it spread like wildfire. Mutuals who hadn't spoken to me in years started messaging me, trying to get the real story. Some were supportive. Others were clearly fishing for drama. I ignored them all. I didn't need validation anymore. The court had spoken. That was enough. But of course, the public sobbing didn't stop there. My parents doubled down. They posted a long message on Facebook from their shared account, which they almost never used unless it was for birthdays or outdated political takes. This time, they made it crystal clear. They only had one true son. They praised Derek's honesty, called him flawed but loyal, and said that while betrayal had wounded their family, they would heal as long as they stuck together. My name wasn't mentioned. Not once. I didn't expect them to apologize, but seeing that, it hit harder than I thought it would. Because it was final. Undeniable. They chose him. Even after all of this. A few days later, I got another letter in the mail. This one wasn't from the court or Derek's lawyer. It was from my parents. A handwritten note. My mom's cursive on the front of the envelope. I almost threw it away. Almost. But curiosity got the better of me. It was 3 pages long, full of backhanded nostalgia, rewritten history, and veiled accusations. My mom wrote that she remembered the sweet boy I used to raise, and how sad it was to see me become so bitter and vengeful. She said family means forgiveness, that no one's perfect, that Derek, for all his flaws, always had a good heart. There was no mention of the loan, no acknowledgement of the forged signature, no apology, just more gaslighting, more deflection, and at the very end, a single sentence that almost made me laugh. If you ever decide to come home, know that our door is open, but only if you're ready to let go of the past and move forward with love. Love, right? The truth is, that door was never open for me. Not when I was growing up and treated like an afterthought. Not when I built my own life and was told I lacked family spirit. And certainly not now, after they threw me to the wolves and expected me to thank them for the privilege. I didn't respond. I blocked their numbers, deleted the shared contacts, cleaned house, figuratively and literally. There's a strange peace in the silence. I still go to work. I still cook for myself. I still have a life that, while quieter than I ever expected, is finally mine. It's been almost 4 months since the verdict. The debt's officially off my name now. It took a mountain of paperwork, dozens of follow-ups with credit agencies, and more stress than I care to admit. But it's done. My credit score is still recovering, But the weight of that loan, that ridiculous red Mustang, and everything it symbolized is finally gone. Derek's gone quiet. No more posts. No more videos. I don't know if he's laying low or if his world just finally caught up to him. I've heard rumors from a cousin, from a friend of a friend, that there's an ongoing investigation into the forgery side of things. If he's smart, he's lawyered up and keeping his head down. As for my parents, silence. Complete, echoing silence. Not even the occasional guilt trip text or passive-aggressive holiday card. I think, in their minds, I'm no longer part of the family. A ghost. A traitor who chose the courts over love. And for the first time in my life, I'm not scrambling to earn their approval. I don't want it. Not anymore. I don't miss them. I miss the idea of them. The idea that I had a brother who looked out for me, parents who had my back. But I've learned to stop clinging to ghosts. Now, I go home to a place I pay for, sleep in peace, and wake up without waiting for the next emotional ambush. It's quiet, but it's mine, and I'll take that over chaos masked as love any day.